Welcome everybody to this presentation about some aspects of the Sutherland School of Architecture and Built Environment that you may not be aware of, and which showcase some of our strengths, including that of our graduates. It's a pleasure to be able to give this presentation to you. My name is David McLean. I'm head of school and professor within the school, and I'd like to take you through a dozen or so slides that actually show some aspects of the school that you may be less aware of, but also build on the information that you probably have as applicants or interested parties within the school. So to start off with, I think the point that I really want to impress, I suppose, on this through this slide is about the way in which the school and indeed the university invests in your success as students. The university is very much intensive in terms of its teaching and learning experience. It puts that above any other function, and it sees the student experience, the quality of that experience, the quality of your teaching and learning as being absolutely central to its ethos. As regards the Sutherland School, we're a school of modest scale. We have in total about 750 students. And that scale allows you to get to know us as staff very quickly, and vice versa. And that means that throughout your time as a student, you're very well supported. You have means of accessing us on a regular basis, talking to us formally or informally about matters which of course are academic, but which also might be about other aspects of life that you might want advice on, or issues that are actually affecting your studies. And in terms of a good student experience, the role of the university in that respect, in alleviating you of any worries that you have or helping you find support for any concerns that might be particular to your circumstances, are very important. It also means you get very strong tutorial advice. And one of the things that our annual surveys of student perceptions shows year on year is that our students see one of the greatest strengths of the school has been the accessibility of staff and the ability to get a good, strong academic advice as and when they need it. And that's something that we are particularly proud of and put a great deal of effort into. There is no agenda to significantly grow the scale of the school, and therefore those qualities are things that we see as being absolutely preserved into the future. Our staff are multicultural. They're very diverse, and increasingly that's an important issue in a world that rightly expects values of inclusivity and diversity. And therefore, you know, the principles of equity and inclusion are really underpinned in the way that we deliver in our teaching as much as we possibly can. The other point is that we have we enjoy very modern facilities, a building that we moved into about 5 years ago, designed specifically for our activities and for the kind of learning that our students go through, and which I'm very happy to say was designed by one of our graduates from about 20 years ago, Scott McKenzie, who's a director of BDP, Building Design Partnership in Glasgow, a big multinational firm. And that he is one of the principals of their Glasgow office. So there was a real interest that he had beyond the professional interest, a personal interest in ensuring that the school, through its new facilities, had an absolutely contemporary and fit for purpose provision. And since we moved in, it's been seen as a great strength. At a time when many universities are challenged in terms of space, Robert Gordon University invested very heavily in the school in making sure that the kinds of spaces that are particular to the learning processes and methods of all our courses, particularly studio-based learning and project-based learning that the majority of our courses engage on to varying degrees, was actually provided for in terms of space. So it's not just a place where you can where you come, engage in classes and then leave. There's a place where you can actually be, where you can actually work of your own volition and under your own steam in between classes and so on. And therefore, for many students, the school becomes a kind of home in terms of their academic studies, and that's a very important principle for us. In terms of the next slide, the issue of industry links and the links with our professions is fundamental to the university and indeed to the courses within the Sutherland School, whichever one you apply. And we are very lucky to have some very distinguished practitioners amongst those that contribute, amongst the many that contribute to all our courses. We see these people increasingly as core to the delivery teams. They are not sort of adjuncts, they are not add-ons that actually we bring in when we can. We have input from professional practices, from industry experts as part of the core delivery team to complement the academic expertise that the full-time academic staff have. So, for example, MacLeod & Aitken, an international team, company of surveyors, they contribute to the surveying team on a regular basis, weekly or fortnightly, bringing a great breadth of perspective from the professional world, including an international perspective, being a company that has offices in Aberdeen right through to cities in Australia. Equally, Balfour Beatty contributes to the construction management course and indeed to other courses within the school. Balfour Beatty are again a very large multinational firm. They are involved in some of the very exciting projects across the country. High-speed railway, HS2, is something they were already working on. And if for those closer to home, closer to Aberdeen, will know that the recently opened Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route was Balfour Beatty were part of the consortium that delivered that very significant civil engineering project. And Steve Petrie, the director for business development within the overall UK company, is one of our visiting professors. And similarly, we have two visiting professors who, I'm happy to say, contribute to the architecture course on a weekly basis. They travel from the Central Belt, they travel from Edinburgh and choose the school in Aberdeen to actually make their input and make their mark on, and they make a very significant contribution to the school. Neil Gillespie, in the top left of the slide, his company, Riech & Hall Architects in Edinburgh, been shortlisted 3 times for the Sterling Prize, UK's most prestigious architecture prize. And Neil is the lead designer within that particular company, and an example of their work in the far north of Scotland is the Peer Arts Centre in Orkney, which was a project started way back in 2006. Equally, Bill Black from Architects Richard Murphy Architects in Edinburgh. It's a similar story. He travels up on a weekly basis. Very distinguished architect working within a very notable company, a multi-award winning company, as with Riech & Hall and Neil previously mentioned. So we have people that are coming that are very, very high caliber, that bring great insight into our courses and are complemented by many other professionals that contribute to our courses. This slide is really about the nature of our learning, and I was just talking about the input from professions. The reason that's important is that you're tapping into the very latest contemporary knowledge within the profession and experiences of those individuals who might be working within their office and the next day talking to you as students over a drawing board, for example. And that's a very, very important relationship that benefits them. They get a lot out of the energy of our students, but benefits you in terms of your studies and making sure that you're getting the very best guidance alongside the academic staff. And all our project is applied in nature. What that means is it's project-based. All our courses have project-based learning, whereby you are not just learning information by rote through lectures, but you're beginning to apply that learning to scenarios, to settings that we give you, to project briefs, and begin to problem solve, think creatively about how knowledge, theoretical knowledge and understanding can be applied within the context of your particular discipline that you choose, the particular course that you choose. And ultimately, in terms of, at graduate or postgraduate level, that can actually be work of very, very significant value. And the two examples I cite here are work from recent years from our master's students in architecture. On the right-hand side is some work to do with Scottish schools and students looking at different models for school design. There has been a lot in the press in recent years about problems and failings within some contemporary Scottish schools, not least the partial collapse of a building in Edinburgh, which was very, very widely covered in the media, and it was a shocking incident. The students looked at that, at how buildings are built, how they're manufactured, but also, what are the models for a good spatial organization of schools that actually stimulate learning, or are fit for purpose in terms of evolving learning methods within primary and secondary schools. And they did a very detailed study, a project that lasted some 2 years, that had some collective group work, but also some individual proposals that came from that in terms of students' individual designs for schools and ideas for schools. But the research work shown in these 4 coloured volumes was actually presented to members of the Scottish Parliament, was exhibited at Holyrood in the Scottish Parliament, and therefore was an example where the thinking of students, led by our visiting professors and other staff, made a significant impact in the thinking, the real life thinking about how educational buildings might be undertaken in the future. On the left-hand side is a poster for an exhibition that was held within the community of Stromness and Kirkwall in the summer of 2019. Again, master's students had been looking at real-life scenarios, looking at how the social and economic sustainability and cultural sustainability of the Orkney Islands can be preserved and enhanced, and came up with a number of very visionary and imaginative ideas that we then took to the community. Similarly, the project was of some considerable length, again 2 years. It involved conversations with the community, meeting with council leaders, meeting with other parties and stakeholders within the islands, and getting an understanding, a deep understanding of place and the community. And the project culminated in an exhibition of student work within the town of Stromness, which attracted enormous interest right across the islands, and a deep level of engagement from the public. And I think the role of the school, as through its project-based work in addressing real challenges within the communities which are within our own city or in the north of Scotland, is a very valuable role that the school can play. And the students, of course, benefited enormously from that, made their contacts, made their own networks, developed communication skills beyond that which can be readily developed within the university. And already students, through the way that we learn, the very sophisticated communication skills in any case. So it's a very positive experience all around. We regard our students as nascent professionals from the minute they come in the door. You made the commitment to come and study a subject within the university and within the school, and similarly we like to regard you and treat you as professionals going forward, even if you are just in week 1 of your course. And over that period of 4 years normally for a degree, but it might be 6 years to masters in terms of the required regulatory period for the architecture course, you are learning in a staged, progressive way. We have courses that allow you to develop skills and knowledge, understanding in a very systematic and structured way, obviously, that allow you to build up those professional skills. Part of our courses involve placements. All our degrees have an experience in professional practice, whether it is within architecture, what we call the professional experience year or year out, or whether it's a formal placement, which is sought through a collaboration between student, school, and the university's placement office. That ability to contextualize your learning in the middle of your studies, to be able to understand how what you have learned fits into place within the working world is very, very important. And the ability to contribute within the workplace, learn things and gain experiences of working with other professionals that are more difficult to simulate within a university environment is a very, very important facet of placement and professional working. Similarly, you'll get access to building sites, which we try and provide wherever possible. But clearly, if you're working within a consultancy or within a contracting organization, you'll have the ability to actually sort of do that on a more routine basis and augment the learning that you have, learn new things in preparation for the completion of your course when you return to the university. The exhibitions that I spoke about, the kind of research work that we do as outreach, the examples that I gave in the previous slide, also develop fantastic professional skills. And the university is committed to developing beyond professional competencies and abilities that one would expect through a course. When wanting to study surveying, you'd expect to learn expert knowledge and abilities and skills relating to the surveying profession. But the development of the individual is also at a hugely influential point in one's life for the majority of our students who are coming straight from school, for example, is a very important facet of learning as well. The development of individual adaptability, of resilience, of collaboration and working with others, of communication and interpersonal skills that come with that are very, very important sort of facets of learning as well. So it's the development of the learning of what we call the whole person rather than just the professional skills. We know from employers that people take on graduates expecting them to have particular competencies and abilities in terms of their subject area, but it is often the degree to which those other attributes are developed that actually are defining in terms of whether that person is a preferred employee, for instance, in terms of a job application, for example. That's something that the school and university has always been particularly good at, but we are looking to take that to the next level because employers increasingly are looking for those attributes as part of the sort of profile of graduates that you're seeking to employ. And moving on to the curriculum and what you learn. Obviously, every course has its own individual curriculum, and that covers a range of different subject areas and topics within your chosen and particular professional discipline. But there are a number of areas, there are 3 areas in particular, actually, that the broad construction industry is really changing in relation to the present moment. And a number of those areas do have, if you like, as a byproduct, through the way that the school is addressing those areas and through which all our curricula are addressing those areas, there's a lot of transferable learning that can lead to other possibilities and opportunities for students and graduates too. The first is in digital transformation. And the whole design and construction industry at the present moment is moving quite rapidly through a transition from more analog methods to a very smart digital way of working. The design profession has been there substantially for a number of years, and that of course continues to develop with artificial intelligence and virtual reality and augmented reality and so on. But the process of constructing buildings, taking the information that is produced by design teams and making the building, is something which actually is beginning to transform much more rapidly now. The idea of automated construction, of robotics being involved in construction, the use of drones to monitor the construction of building sites, for example, as the image here suggests. And so the digital agenda is very carefully sort of featured and very deliberately featured within the curriculum of every one of our courses, and that's something that we've recently reviewed because of its central importance. And obviously having a digital knowledge it stands you in very good stead for a number of careers beyond the one which obviously your chosen professional route would lead you towards. The unavoidable area that we also have to address is that of climate change, and indeed certain of our professions, the architectural profession in particular, has declared a climate emergency. And thinking about how the built environment responds to that. Buildings and cities produce about 40% of the world's CO2 and pollution. It is hugely consumptive of materials. That has impacts on environments. And of course, the architecture and built environment area overall is concerned about making places for people, places that are of high quality. But one must increasingly think about how one does that to ensure that there's preservation of biodiversity, to ensure that we are not detrimentally affecting the environment for other species too. And there's a strong ethical dimension to that. There are strong lessons in terms of social responsibility for those professional areas involved in the design and realization of the built environment. So that is absolutely uppermost in our mind, and increasingly legislation, professional requirements expects quite rightly that skills in those areas are being rapidly developed. And there's a lot of continual learning in that particular area as well. So we've got a big role to play, but we've got a big impact to make potentially, where the built environment has such a stake within the overall climate future for us all. The other area that's of great importance is around collaborative working. No buildings or cities, being the complex things that they are, come about due to the ideas of an individual. They are all the result of a complex collaboration between many experts. And the ability to work collaboratively, work in teams, work effectively in teams, is hugely important. It hasn't been the strength of the industry thus far, and there's now a great deal of emphasis being placed on that, and all the benefits and gains that come through great minds thinking alike. That is partly fueled by the digital agenda now, where people can actually look in real time on different parts of the world on the same drawing on a computer, for example, or the same piece of information, spreadsheet or document. And so the ability to actually work in a less siloed way, in a way where professionally boundaries are a little bit less obstructive, is a very important agenda too, and that's something else that we've built into the curriculum of all our courses in response to that particular direction of travel. Ultimately, the qualification that you leave the university and school with, we believe will launch your career. The university has very, very high graduate employment statistics. Happily, that is mirrored within the school. For all the reasons in terms of the curriculum content that I've just been referring to, the personal attributes that you develop through your course, or indeed through extracurricular activities, student societies within the school or beyond, are all part of your learning profile. and are highly valued by employers, and that's something which we're very, very proud of. Have a number of professional bodies and industry representatives, professionals who sponsor prizes that are awarded on a merit basis annually to students. And this photograph here is a fairly recent photograph of one such prize-winning group of prize winners. And then I'm happy to say one of the most recent ones, Year 3 Women in Property National winner, Jennifer Lafan, last year, a UK-wide competition which is run by a very active and vibrant group called Women in Property, which leads me to another issue, which is that we are working very hard beyond the school with the secondary and indeed at times with the primary sector to develop an understanding of the fantastic contemporary career opportunities that exist within design and construction, and which actually attract now an increasingly balanced gender mix, which is something which is very important. And I'm very happy to say that whilst the school will continue to work on this, we have a very sort of vibrant and mixed gender balance within the school. Robert Gordon University is involved in applied research. It doesn't undertake blue sky esoteric research, but it engages in research which is, the term is applied. What that means is that the research is meaningful to individuals, to companies, is useful within the workplace. It isn't abstract. And some examples of that are within the documents that are on this particular slide here. Digital participation and collaboration in architectural design. So that is all about, it's about the digital world, but it's about collaborative working methods, and that's one of the themes that I talked about a little earlier. The second one, getting to grips with building information modeling, which is BIM, is also about digital methods and the transformation digitally about how we design, plan out, organize the construction of and realize our buildings. And these two pieces of research culminated in books. These are both the front cover of books that have been published by members of staff with others, which actually are at the sort of leading edge of those particular areas. And the document on the right hand is one of a number of documents I could have shown relating to our contribution to sustainability. In this particular case, a document we contributed to, a member of staff contributed to do, which is really about renovation, what we call retrofit, the ability to take old buildings which are not particularly thermally efficient because they were designed at a time when that wasn't a consideration, and how we upgrade them thermally to impact positively on release of detrimental gases, CO2 and so on, but also to lower energy consumption as well, to the benefit of everyone, but not least the occupant who is actually feeling it through their energy bills. And so these are areas where, interestingly, they completely align with the three areas of our core areas of our curricula around collaboration, around climate change, and around digital that I referred to earlier. So what's important about research is that it's new knowledge, and you will benefit. And I've just given an example, in a sense, about how the research that the school does can and will benefit you individually and give you access to that cutting-edge knowledge through the curricula of your course, whatever your course is. There are other aspects to the university, of course, that you can benefit from. University life extends far beyond the bounds of your course or the bounds of your school. There are student societies, a great breadth of societies that are operating. There are opportunities to do things cross-disciplinary with other schools and students from other schools. You'll get to know students from a range of other areas ideas in any case, just through your social activity. But there are also initiatives that the university has promoted and initiated within recent years, which have been hugely beneficial to all our students, and indeed to the students of the Sutherland School very keenly. One is the development of innovation at our RGU, the setting up of an RGU startup accelerator for potential entrepreneurs, those with business ideas. And through a bidding process, submission of ideas, the strongest, the applications that are seen to be strongest, which are open to students, staff, alumni, graduates, those opportunities get some financial backing, get coaching, get mentorship from industrialists and so on, and allow students to develop those ideas, or allow the successful teams to develop their ideas. It might be a team, it might be an individual. You might recognize on the right-hand side the gentleman in the middle, who's Theo Paphitis, who one of the dragons on the BBC's Dragon's Den, a very successful entrepreneur and investor in business, supporter of new business. And the people to either side of them, on the left-hand side, Ali, and the right-hand side, Shahan, are two master's students who have just graduated last month, who in the course of their 5th year developed a business idea, applied to the accelerator, succeeded in getting support funding to develop their idea, developed it throughout their 6th year in tandem with their studies, won a number of national awards, which is why you see them here rightly beaming alongside Mr. Paphitis, and who are now have a trading business and are developing that over the course of the next year to take it as far as they can. So it's an example of the support for industry that the university provides, the support for the development and creation and cultivation of innovative ideas that the university provides, and the opportunities for students and graduates to actually develop those ideas and get business support. Support and a process through which you will learn enormously, whether your business takes off or whether, as many do, business ideas run into the sand. Still enormously rich learning processes. It's something that I am very pleased and proud to see our students succeed in. Not least, in a way it doesn't surprise me, because I know our school to be very creative, very innovative in terms of the students that it has. But to see people flourish in ways that otherwise might have been invisible to us is a very rewarding thing. And similarly, this year we had another architecture student, so the second round of the university's accelerator program, a successful recipient, Lucy Fisher. She developed an idea which actually has little relationship to architecture, but is actually to do with knitting. But nonetheless, she had a very interesting business idea. And Lucy, as a graduate of the school, she's been graduated for 13 months now, has a very, very interesting story to tell. As a second-year architecture student, she won a competition for a festival, the ideas for the design of a pavilion for a festival of architecture that was being promoted in the city and across Scotland. And her idea was for a mirror pavilion to be positioned in the Castle Gate at the end of Union Street in Aberdeen. In year 3, with the support of other graduates who run contracting businesses, we actually, and indeed other consultants who helped us out, she was actually successful with the sponsorship that we managed to gain in seeing her design built and in the city centre as a sort of focus and hub for the exhibition for a period of 1 month. And indeed, there were local authorities at the end of that month from across Scotland who subsequently sought to buy the pavilion off the city once the festival was done. So it's an extraordinarily early success, an unusual early success. These opportunities don't come up every year, but a fantastic illustration of how we and our students will seize that opportunity when they do arrive. And then 1 year after graduating, a winner of the RGU Startup Accelerator. So an example of how these opportunities have really allowed Lucy to flourish in many, many ways. Also, in terms of graduates, we have a long history. Our subjects, a number of our subjects have been, all our subjects have been taught for decades. In the case of surveying and architecture, a century and over. So we have graduates from all parts of the world and who are working all around the world. An example of that, and two examples in this slide and the next. Chris Hardy, who is a principal partner of a Danish practice called Schmidt Hammer Lassen. He runs their Asian office out of Shanghai, designing in the top here the new Shanghai City, which is well underway at the present moment in terms of its construction, and down below a gallery building and library in Nova Scotia. Chris worked for a number of very high-profile companies in this country before joining Schmidt Hammer Lassen and heading out to the Far East, where he's developed his career now for, I think, some 9 years. So very high-profile work from one of the really sort of high-end design houses working internationally. By contrast, to some extent, not an ambition by any means, but a contrast through the work that Annie Kenyon does. This lady featured here, she graduated a number of years ago, set up, I think she, from a very early point in her studies, wanted to establish her own design consultancy in Northeast Scotland, developing or designing primarily, developing steadings and so on. And that work has continues in terms of our architectural practice, but has also developed into a development company, quite distinct from the architecture company as well, that actually sort of sees opportunities, buys land, develops its own buildings and so on, and sells them on. Very successful entrepreneurial move that not all architects make. And Annie's a great example of one of our graduates who is working locally, making a real contribution to the profession locally, to the culture of design and construction within the region, and making a great success out of it. And I think what I would like to say is, as a sort of finishing comment in terms of our graduates, noting that we have over a century of graduates coming through the school, is that there are opportunities that are hugely diverse. There are opportunities to work on the real iconic projects internationally, exemplified by Chris Hardy in the previous slide. And there's an opportunity to make a difference to your local home area, as exemplified here in the work of Annie. And those two sort of methods of working, if you like, are as important as one another. The built environment is not all about iconic projects. The everyday is every bit as important, and probably, arguably, impacts a well-designed everyday environment. Probably impacts, as one might say, more than the iconic projects. But we also understand when we visit cities around the world that those iconic projects have a huge cultural value as well. And so I'm very proud to say there are many examples I could give of alumni from all across our disciplines, but who have worked and helped, either designed or helped realize working in the consultancy teams or actually contracting teams to achieve the buildings that we know and love around us. And the final example I would give from our surveying side is Adam Shaw, is Executive Vice President of WT Partnership in North America. He works out of California. The slide here shows him giving a keynote address at a major conference, property conference. His company are a leading what they call P3 company, which is really about private public-private partnership, and his expertise is about business strategy and delivering the methods or consulting on the methods and tools and organizational processes to deliver mega projects, large-scale building and civil engineering projects across North America. So once again, somebody who has traveled afar, but somebody who has made a very particular niche and operating at a very, very high level elsewhere in the world, as an example, once again, of the diversity of opportunity that exists with the school. And finally, to go back to a slide that I showed towards the beginning, which talked about the dissemination of our student work. We are delighted to say that we have an exhibition titled Drawn North, which shows the work of our Master's Architecture students, or graduates as they are now. It is designed and hosted in collaboration with Aberdeen Art Gallery and the Peer Arts Centre Orkney, so this is going to have a national and international reach, and has been designed and curated by the student, rightly, as the work contained within the project is authored by them. And it's once again a fantastic showcase of not just the creativity and vision of the students and their professionalism in putting their work together, but also this exhibition together, but also the resilience to be able to do that at very short notice, post-lockdown in the current COVID situation that we're in at the present moment. So thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope it's shone a light on some facets of the school that perhaps add to your knowledge that you didn't know about previously. And I hope, above all, that the content that I've covered heightens your interest in the school, and I very much hope that in the future weeks and months we will see some of you join our community. Thank you very much indeed.